Welcome and good morning to the Sunday service at UUMAN, the Unitarian Universalist Metro Atlanta North congregation in Roswell, Georgia. UUMAN is one of many congregations, several hundred of them, that form part of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We have no dogma, but we believe in 7 principles, some of which include the worth and dignity of every human being, the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, and the interconnected web of life. If you are a first-time visitor, please fill out the form on our website and you will receive more information about us. In the meantime, sit back and relax as you hear many stories from Native people today as we explore our spirituality together and enjoy the company of each other.
A long time ago, the Cherokee and other native peoples lived on the land where UUMAN now sits. This is a place where they had hopes and dreams and listened to the crickets at night with their children. We acknowledge this land was stolen from them in the 1800s. We ask what this means to us as people of justice.
Good morning. This is an excerpt from the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address. The Haudenosaunee, known to us as the Iroquois Confederacy. Today we have gathered and we see the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and with all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one and we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. We are thankful to our mother, the earth, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk about upon her. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. To our mother, we send greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst and providing us with strength. Water is life. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mists and streams, rivers and oceans. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the Spirit of water. Now our minds are one. We are thankful for the powers that we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh and purify the air we breathe. They help us to bring the change of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds. Now our minds are one.
We light our chalice as a symbol of gratitude as we celebrate the abundance of our lives together. In our homes and our hearts, we harvest bushels of strength together for one another and offer our crop with the hands of compassion and generosity. In the authentic and gentle manner of our connections, we cultivate a simple sweetness to brighten our spirits. May we be grateful for the ways we nourish and uplift each other, for it is the strong sharing of this hallowed time together that sustains us.
Thanksgiving is a complicated holiday for Native Americans. Many choose to reject the holiday as it commemorates invasion, theft, and genocide. Since 1970, the United American Indians of New England have held a national day of mourning on Thanksgiving Day. And each year on Thanksgiving, they march through the streets of Plymouth, Massachusetts. Yet other Native Americans choose to celebrate the spirit of Thanksgiving, knowing that as part of their traditions, they annually celebrated the fruits of the autumn harvest long before the first settlers ever arrived. Connection with Mother Earth and gratitude for her bounty is woven into the fabric of their existence. The Native Americans are storytellers, and today we will share some of their stories. This is a story from the Algonquin tradition. It's called The Adventures of Great Rabbit. Wildcat is mean and ferocious. He has a long, beautiful tail and long, sharp fangs, and his favorite food is rabbit. One day, Wildcat was very hungry, and he says, "I am going to eat Mahtigwess, the great rabbit, and nothing less will do. May my long, beautiful tail fall off. May I have nothing but a little stump of a tail if I fail to catch Mahtigwess, the great rabbit." Now, Great Rabbit was kind of a magical being, and he could sense what others were thinking. And he understood that Wildcat was after him. So he got a head start and ran off far ahead. But Wildcat was persistent. And soon darkness fell and Great Rabbit grew tired. And then Wildcat, in the evening, came upon a big, fine wigwam, and he stuck his head through the door. Sitting inside was an old, gray-haired chief, sitting solemn and mighty. The only strange thing about this old gray-haired chief was that he had 2 long ears standing up beside his head. "Great chief, have you seen a biggish rabbit?" The big chief replied, "Oh, there's hundreds of rabbits running around here. Just don't worry about them. Let's have some rabbit stew together, and why don't you get a good night's rest?" And that's what they did. Great rabbit stew and great sleep in front of the fire. But Wildcat awoke the next morning, freezing and alone on a windswept snowfield, and he was hungry. And Wildcat realized that it was all an illusion. The stew, the fire, the wigwam, all an illusion created by the great rabbit. "By my tail, I swear I'll catch and eat that great rabbit," said Wildcat. Meanwhile, Great Rabbit ran far ahead, and soon it became nightfall, time for rest. And Wildcat came upon a large village. It was full of busy people. And in the middle of the village was a white church that the French Jesuits used to put up in many of the Native American towns. And he saw a man going in to the church. Wildcat said, "Friend, have you seen a biggish rabbit?" "Shh," said the man. "There's a prayer meeting going on here. It's just about time for the sermon." And Wildcat and the man walked into the church service. And inside there was a gray-haired preacher, stern-looking. The only strange thing about that preacher is that he had 2 big ears sticking up from the side of his head. And he was preaching a very, 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 very long sermon about wickedness of wild beasts who tear up victims with their big, sharp fangs. "Such savage fiends will be punished for their sins," said the preacher. Finally, after this horrendously long sermon, Wildcat approached the preacher and said, "Hey, have you seen a biggish rabbit around here?" "Oh, there are plenty of rabbits around here, but let's hunt for them tomorrow. Tonight, it's time for rest. Sunday, you need to rest. We'll prepare a fire for you, and we'll prepare some great food for you." And they did, and they gave him a nice, great, big, comfortable bearskin rug upon which to sleep. "Wow, you really know how to treat a guest," said Wildcat. Well, the next morning, Wildcat woke up, and he found himself in a dismal, wet, foggy cedar swamp. There was no village, no church, no people, no food, and he was ankle deep in this freezing swamp. And he was hungry. Again, he realized it was all an illusion created by the great rabbit. But still, he swore by his tail that he would catch and eat the great rabbit. So on he went. Well, that night, Wildcat came to 2 beautiful wigwams, one belonging to a chief, one belonging to his daughter. The chief was an elderly, gray-haired, gentle-looking man. The only strange thing was that he had 2 horsetail locks extending from his head, and his daughter made a fire and served him some fine food. Wildcat was suspicious. He said, "Hey, your locks look like rabbit ears, and your split nose looks like a rabbit nose, and the soles of your feet are yellow like a rabbit's." "Oh, that's nothing. That's nothing," said the chief. "Everyone in our tribe wears their locks this way, horsetail locks. And I was splitting some wood the other day, and a piece of wood flew up after my axe hit it, and it hit me right in the nose and cut me. And I was chewing some tobacco the other day, but I was spitting it all over the ground and walking all over it, and that's why my soles are stained yellow." Well, when Wildcat woke, of course, he had been tricked. The food that he'd been eating was actually rabbit droppings. Ugh! He was very angry. He took off on the trail for Great Rabbit. This time will be the last time. Wildcat came upon a lake, and in the middle of the lake was a large French sailing vessel loaded up with cannon and guns. And the captain of the French ship, a stern old man with a three-cornered hat. Well, the only strange thing about this captain is he had two long ears sticking up from outside of the hat. "Rabbit, I know that's you," said Wildcat. "You're no French captain. I'm coming out there for you, and I'm going to eat you." Wildcat began swimming across the lake. Well, Great Rabbit then ordered his men to commence firing. This was new for Wildcat. Of course, it was all an illusion, but the noise, the smoke, and the water flying about disoriented Wildcat, and he got frightened. He turned his tail and swam back to shore and then headed into the woods. And once he was safe in the woods panting, he turned and he saw that his tail was missing. It was just a stub, a bob of a tail. And he was no longer a wildcat. Now, he was a bobcat.
Befitting a service based on Native people's stories, today we will drop shells instead of pebbles for our joys and sorrows. This one from Paula Watson. She's happy to report that her most recent PET scan shows nothing to be concerned about. She's reached 3 years with no evidence of triple-negative breast cancer, which is a milestone. Unlike other breast cancers, triple-neg most often metastasizes in the first 3 years and drops off significantly after that. Another pebble from Paula and Rick Irwin. Rick will be part of a clinical trial at Emory's Alzheimer's Research Center. He will join a cohort of people in early-stage Alzheimer's twice weekly for 5 hours. Programs are designed to slow progression and encourage friendships that will last for the entire year. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like to share with us, please include it in the chat section during the service. And finally, this last shell. For all those joys and sorrows that are too tender to be spoken aloud, may we hold each other in our care during the coming week.
This is a story told by John Fire Lame Deer. It's called The Two Lost Boys of the Sioux. Long, long ago, 2 young Indian boys found themselves lost on the prairie. They were playing ball at the edge of the village, and they'd kick the ball farther and farther away from the village. And then from that location, they were playing with their toy bows and arrows, shooting them, of course, farther away from the village. Then, when they were retrieving their arrows, they heard an animal off in the distance, so they decided to investigate. Then they came upon a stream, and they decided, hey, I wonder where this stream goes. So they followed this stream further upstream, again, farther from the village. Then they came to a big hill, and they wondered what might be on the other side of that hill. So they went over to try to investigate. And then on the other side of the hill, they saw some antelope. They decided to chase the antelope, trying to catch it. Of course, they didn't. But now they were much farther from the village. And then they realized that they were lost. They had no idea where they were. It soon got dark, and they slept under a tree. The next morning, they started walking home, thinking that they were going in the right direction. But of course, nope. Going in the wrong direction, again, farther from the village. They were getting hungry. They were drinking water from streams, eating berries off of bushes. They dug up some turnips. I just realized that 2 Sundays in a row, turnips have come up during the Sunday service. There is something seriously wrong with that. Turnips on the Sunday service. Anyway, the boys were hungry. They were eating berries, turnips, and drinking water. Well, they walked for 4 days, and they wished so badly that a search party would find them, but nobody did find them. On the 4th day, the boys suddenly had a feeling that they were being followed. It was none other than Mato, the grizzly bear, but no ordinary grizzly bear, a giant grizzly bear. To Mato, the boys would just be a small morsel of food, yet Mato was hungry, and he decided that he would want to have those boys as a tasty dessert. The boys began to run. Yet Mato was fast, and he was almost upon them. They could see his enormous jaws. They could see his wicked teeth. They could feel his hot breath on their back. Oh, they prayed. They prayed, Wankantanka, Creator, please have pity on us. And all at once, the earth shook, and it began to rise. And the boys rose with it on a cone of rock. 100 feet, 200 feet, 500 feet, 800 feet, 1,000 feet high, this cone of rock with the boys on top. Mato became angry. He could almost reach the top of the cone of rock. He was clawing at the sides of the rock. He tried every angle. He went around the whole rock, clawing at it, trying to get up, but it was too slippery. This cone of rock with the marks of Mato's claws on the side is what we know now, what we call the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. But finally, Mato gave up, and he wandered off, a growling, grunting mountain of fur disappearing over the horizon. Yay, we're saved, they said. Or were they? How would they get down? They're on top of this cliff of rock, 1,000 feet up. How to get down? Well, the Great Spirit didn't save them just to let them perish on the top of the rock. He sent Wanbli, the eagle, always a friend to the people, to rescue them. Wanbli soared down, snatched the 2 boys up in his talons, and carried them safely home to the village. This is a story from the Tewa people of New Mexico. It's called The Husband's Promise. Long ago, there were 2 young lovers, Capine and Willowflower, and they promised that they'd never part from one another. They were married, and after the ceremony, they built a little home outside of the village on the edge of the prairie. Yet after 3 moons, 3 months, Willowflower became ill. And although Capine tried hard to save her, he could not. And Willowflower died. Capine was despondent, beside himself with grief. Yet after many, many moons, he learned to live with that grief. There wasn't much for him to do. He'd go visit his parents almost every day in the village. After a year or so, he noticed when he came home from visiting his parents, off further away from the village, he saw a light in the woods. He didn't think anything of it. But night after night, he'd see that light off in the woods, and he knew that it wasn't there like years before. So eventually, he went out to investigate. It took him almost an hour to get there. And finally, when he did, he discovered that there was a house out there. He had a strange feeling. He didn't want to knock on the door. He saw that there was a big window in the front that didn't have any curtains. So he decided to peek inside. And he was shocked by what he saw, because what he saw inside was his wife, Willow Flower, all dressed up as if to go out. And she was combing her beautiful, long black hair that extended all the way to her knees. He thought, that light was for me. Why hadn't I come before? He continued to watch Willow Flower through the window, and he saw her putting on her snow-white moccasins, like she was ready to go out somewhere. And he wanted to speak to her before she left. So he goes into the house. "What are you doing here?" said Willow Flower. "I would have come sooner, said Capine. I didn't know that it was you out here." "You can't stay here. You must go," said Willow Flower. "Why? You said that we would never part," said Capine. "Now we can stay together as promised." Angrily, Willow Flower replied, "You cannot stay here. You do not belong with me. And until your time comes, you cannot be with me. Go before it's too late." Yet Capine insisted, and a quarrel ensued. Capine was insistent that he wanted to stay. And finally, Willow Flower relented. "All right, stay the night. And if you are still here in the morning, I will go with you to the village." Capine agreed. Willow Flower prepared a bed for him on the floor, and they went to sleep. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, Capine woke up, and he could smell this awful, pungent odor. And he realized that it was Willow Flower's rotting flesh. He sprung up. "If I leave before she awakes, I'll be free." And he ran for the door. Yet Willow Flower awakened. "Come back, you coward! You have failed to keep your end of the bargain, and now you must pay the price." Yet Capine was not ready to join the people of death, and he began running home with Willow Flower following swift as the wind. Capine came upon an old medicine man who was fishing by a lake. "What's wrong, my son? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm running away from Willow Flower." "So you are," said the medicine man. "You never learned to mind your own business, and now this has happened to you." "You are powerful," said Capine. "Where can I go so that Willow Flower will not catch me?" The medicine man shook his head. There is nowhere that Willow Flower will not find you on this earth. The only thing you can do is to get on the shaft of my special arrow, and I will shoot you into the heavens. Are you comfortable there?" Capine said yes, and Capine got on the shaft of the medicine man's arrow, and the medicine man shot him into the heavens. Then Willow Flower came as well. "Where are you going?" said the medicine man. "I'm after Capine. Have you seen him?" The medicine man replied, "He's now in the sky. You'll have to go there to catch him." "How can I get there?" said Willow Flower. "On the shaft of my special arrow," said the medicine man. "I can shoot you into the heavens. Are you comfortable there?" Willow Flower agreed, and she got on the shaft of the medicine man's arrow, and he shot her into the sky, close to Capine. To this day, Willow Flower is still chasing Capine. Tonight, if the stars are out, just look high in the sky, and you'll see two bright stars close to one another. Now we call them Castor and Pollux. Yet they are Capine and running after him, Willowflower, chasing her husband.
Native American philanthropy is guided by customs and traditions. Native cultures are based on the philosophy that humans are stewards of the natural world and not merely consumers of its resources. Wealth in Native American culture is not measured by net worth, but rather by a combination of behavior, spiritual qualities, and material goods. May we lead by their example as we receive your treasures in our offering. You may use the Givelify app, and we commit ourselves to use these funds wisely and judiciously to further the mission of this community. Thank you.
We extinguish the chalice here that it might go gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again.
Here's another story of the Brule Sioux, told again by John Fire Lame Deer. And it's called The Dogs Hold an Election. Many Native Americans don't think much of white man's elections. Whoever wins, the Native Americans always lose. Well, here's a little story about an election. Once long ago, the Dogs were trying to elect a president. "I nominate Bulldog," somebody said. "He's a good fighter." Someone else said, well, he's not a good runner. He can't catch anybody. Another dog said, I nominate Greyhound. He's a good runner. Yeah, but he can't fight. They couldn't agree. Then a little mutt jumped up and said, I nominate that dog for president who smells good underneath their tail. I second that, another dog yelled. And they all began sniffing under each other's tails. Whew, that doesn't smell good. Whew, you're not presidential material. Wow, this one doesn't smell good either. Whew, you're not my candidate. When you go out for a walk, just watch the dogs. They're still sniffing under each other's tails. They're looking for a good leader, and they just haven't found one yet. Go in peace and enjoy your week.